Welcome to this tutorial on correcting perspective in buildings in Photoshop. So today we're going to take this image here and we're going to correct the perspective of the building. So you'll notice in this image that the building itself is just leaning back a little bit and obviously getting smaller as well at the top. So this is a common issue when you photograph buildings and you point your camera upwards. It causes this. So we're going to use this perspective crop tool, which you'll find underneath the crop tool by right clicking on it. So perspective crop tool, it's very useful for this type of correction. So I'm just going to click and I'm going to drag over the entire image, click outside the image. So these grid lines, what you want to do is we want to grab the top left hand and top right hand corners and drag them inwards and align it with the crooked angles of the building. So I'm going to drag this inwards and I'm aiming to align it with the angle of the building. So you have to use some lines on the building somewhere and line this up so that looks about right. So okay, so it's as simple as that. Just line them up. You've got a nice grid to line them up. You're going to lose a bit of the image. Those bits at the edges will be cropped out. So you have to take that into account when you're making the photograph. And then click enter or click on this little tick at the top to accept the changes. So now we've corrected the perspective. It's still maybe a little bit off. So I want to also show you another tool, which is the lens correction tools for correcting perspective. So we can look at that too, but first let's convert this to smart filters or smart objects. So this will ensure that the changes that we make are non-destructive, or we can go back in and adjust them later. So just click on OK here, and now we need first of all to go back to filter, and then we're going to lens correction. So in the lens correction dialog box, you automatically get the default is the autocorrect. So we want to go to the custom and we want to change the vertical perspective, and we need to drag the slider to the left to change that. So you don't want to push this too far. We have the grid enabled here on the screen, as you can see, and you don't want to really be. You don't need to line it up exactly straight. The grid, of course, we can change as we need by scaling the size of it below. If I push this too far, you get this kind of optical effect, even though the building is straight, where it starts looking actually larger at the top part of the image. So the building, even though we have those straight angles and it's the same on the top and bottom, it looks larger at the top, and that's just an optical illusion. So you need to leave it with a tiny bit of distortion in the building in order to make it look realistic. So we'll go for about -15. It should be a good setting here for this. And I'm going to, before I click on OK, actually what we need to do is to bring the top part of the image back in. We need to just scale it down a little bit, and then we can crop it out, crop it in Photoshop afterwards. So if I just scale it down, just so we get that top part of the building in that was pushed out when we were changing the vertical perspective, and then I'm clicking on OK. So you can see our adjustments stored in the smart filters there, and we can click back into that and look at our settings, and they're stored in that smart filter. So we can change them anytime, so we don't have to add another adjustment on top of an adjustment we already made, which would be destructive. So this is non-destructive. So I'm going to get the crop tool, and I'm now going to crop out the portion of the image, the extra parts of the image at the bottom left and bottom right. So we're obviously, again, we're losing some of the top right and top left of the image. As I mentioned before, make allowances for that if you're taking these types of photographs. And once you're happy then with the crop, click on OK, and there you go. Okay, I hope this tutorial was useful, and I'll see you next time.